When we look at the pyramids, we usually think of them as these giant, silent tombstones, right? Just massive monuments for kings who died a long, long time ago. But what if we've got that all wrong? What if they weren't built for the dead at all, but for the living, or rather for the process of rebirth itself? Let's dive into the idea that these pyramids were actually something way more incredible, powerful machines designed for transformation. Okay, so to really get the pyramids, you first have to get inside the heads of the ancient Egyptians. And this quote, this gets right to the heart of it. For them, death wasn't some final brick wall. Nope, it was a doorway. It was just another stage in this huge cyclical journey of existence, no different than being born. And honestly, that one single idea changes absolutely everything. So let's start there with this concept of transformation. The pyramids weren't just about preserving a king's memory for future generations. They were functional. They were structures designed to actively help with the single most important journey a person could ever take. And look, this whole journey to the afterlife, it wasn't just some vague spiritual hope. It was a process, a very technical, ritual process. And that entire cosmic journey started right here on Earth, with something very, very physical, the body. How that corpse was treated, that was the first and most critical domino. If you got that wrong, the whole thing could fall apart. And that, of course, brings us to maybe the most famous part of all this, mummification. But it wasn't about creating some spooky relic for us to find in a museum thousands of years later. No way. The mummy had a vital, active job to do. It was the soul's anchor in the physical world. So here's the key thing to remember. Mummification was basically preparation for launch. Think of it like assembling a spaceship. The goal wasn't just to keep the body from decaying, but to reassemble it into a perfect, eternal form. Why? So that all the spiritual parts of a person could be released to start their journey into a whole other reality. And this gets us to the central paradox of the mummy, which is fascinating. On one hand, the whole process was designed to, well, incapacitate the body. To make sure the dead didn't come wandering back to haunt the living. But on the other hand, this perfectly preserved body was also the permanent home base, an anchor that the spirit absolutely needed to return to if it wanted to be reborn. This created this incredible codependence. The living needed the dead to stay put, and the dead needed the living to take care of their physical anchor. Okay, so if the mummy is the anchor, what's actually making the journey? Well, the Egyptian idea of the soul was incredibly cool and complex. It wasn't just one thing, it was made of different parts. For what we're talking about today, we're going to focus on the two most important pieces for rebirth, the ka and the ba. This chart breaks it down perfectly. Over on the left, you've got the ka. Think of the ka as your life force, like a spiritual battery. It actually stayed behind in the tomb with the mummy. Then on the right, you've got the ba. The ba was your personality, your character, everything that made you you. This was the mobile part of the soul, the part that could actually travel. So let's dig into the ka for a second. It's often called the spiritual double. After you died, your ka had to be woken up with rituals. And then it had to be sustained with offerings of real food and drink left in the tomb. That's why tombs had all those offering chapels. It was how the living could keep the ka's battery charged, maintaining that crucial link between their world and the next. All right, now for the ba. You can see how the Egyptians drew it as a bird with a human head. And that's just a perfect visual for what it was. The human head was the person's unique identity, and the bird body showed that it could fly free from the tomb. The ba's whole mission was to make this epic journey through the netherworld, and then eventually return to the tomb to reunite with its ka and be reborn. So if we boil it all down to its simplest form, it's this. The mummified body is the permanent anchored vessel, and the ba is the brave traveler, sent out on a cosmic quest, but always needing to find its way back home. Okay, so we've got our vessel, the mummy. We've got our traveler, the ba. So where do the actual pyramids fit into all this? Well, now we get to see how the building itself wasn't just a box, but an active guide for the pharaoh spirit on its mind-bending journey. I mean, can you imagine being the first archaeologist to get inside the chambers of a pyramid like this one, Unis's, and finding the walls just covered in these incredible hieroglyphs? These weren't just decorations or prayers. They are the oldest religious texts in human history, and we call them the pyramid texts. You should think of them as a combination cosmic GPS, an instruction manual, and a book of magic spells for the ba's journey. And check out this quote from those texts. It just shows you how they saw everything. The coffin, the sarcophagus, the tomb itself. These weren't just objects. They were all seen as different forms of the sky goddess, Nut, who was there to literally embrace the king and help him rise up. The tomb wasn't a grave, it was a launch pad into the stars. In fact, the pyramid's internal layout was literally a map of the cosmos. Let's just follow the Baz path here. First, it would awaken in the burial chamber, which was meant to be the Duat, the underworld. From there, it would travel east into the antechamber. That room represented the Akhet, the horizon, the place where night becomes day. And it's here, in this symbolic sunrise, that the Ba could finally become powerful enough to ascend into the sky. All right, so we've looked at the mummy, the Ka, and the Ba, and how the pyramid itself was a guide. Now we can finally put all these pieces together and see what the pyramid's real purpose was. The whole endgame of this unbelievably elaborate process was for the dead king to become something called an Ak, an effective spirit. This is what happened when the traveling Ba, after surviving its journey through the netherworld, finally made it back to the tomb and merged with its waiting, supercharged Ka. This fusion created a new, godlike being, one that could live forever in the afterlife and travel between worlds. And that, right there, is the core idea of this whole explainer. The pyramid was not a passive tomb. It was a piece of active spiritual technology. It was a resurrection machine, a transformation chamber, where every single hallway, room, and carving was engineered for one single purpose: to turn a dead king into an eternal, all-powerful spirit. But you might be thinking, okay, so what? Why go to all this unbelievable trouble for one guy's soul? Because the pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was seen as the only link between humanity and the gods. He was the keeper of Ma'at, the divine concept of cosmic order, balance, and truth. If the king failed to be reborn, it wasn't just a personal tragedy. It could throw the entire universe into chaos. And that leaves us with this one last huge question to think about. When you see it this way, the insane amount of labor and resources they poured into building these things, it suddenly starts to make a different kind of sense. Were they really just monuments to one man's ego? Or did the Egyptians believe they were building essential pieces of cosmic infrastructure, absolutely necessary to make sure the sun would keep rising, the Nile would keep flooding, and the very fabric of creation would hold together?